In just a few centuries, the United States transformed from a distant and mysterious land into one of the most powerful nations the world has ever seen. But this story did not begin with skyscrapers, technology, or global influence. It began with exploration, uncertainty, and the courage of those who dared to cross the unknown. Long before modern America existed, the vast lands of North America were home to diverse indigenous civilizations, thriving cultures that had lived here for thousands of years. Their traditions, communities, and deep connection to the land shaped the earliest history of this continent. Then, everything began to change. In the late 15th century, European explorers began searching for new trade routes across the Atlantic Ocean. What they discovered instead would forever reshape the future of the world. From the arrival of explorers to the birth of 13 colonies, from revolution and civil war to industrial growth and global leadership. The journey of America is a story of ambition, struggle, and transformation. This is the story of a nation built through conflict, vision, and determination. And this is the incredible history of the United States of America. In 1492, a voyage across the Atlantic Ocean changed the course of human history. An Italian explorer sailing under the Spanish crown, Christopher Columbus set out in search of a western route to Asia. Instead, his journey led him to lands previously unknown to Europe. The discovery sparked a wave of exploration. Soon, European powers began sending ships across the ocean, eager to claim territory and expand their influence. Spain, France, and Britain all competed for control of this vast new continent. These early explorations were dangerous and uncertain. Storms, disease, and unfamiliar lands tested the limits of the explorers and settlers who followed. But opportunity was powerful. New resources, fertile land, and the promise of wealth drove thousands of settlers to cross the Atlantic and begin new lives in the New World. And from these early settlements, a new chapter of history began to unfold. By the early 1700s, Britain had established 13 colonies along the eastern coast of North America, known as the 13 colonies. These colonies grew rapidly. Small settlements turned into busy towns and thriving communities. Farmers cultivated the land, merchants built trade networks, and ships traveled constantly between America and Europe. Life in the colonies was not easy. Harsh winters, difficult farming conditions, and political control from Britain shaped everyday life. Yet something unique was developing. The people living in these colonies began to develop their own identity, separate from the British Empire. They valued independence, opportunity, and the freedom to shape their own future. And soon, tensions with Britain would push these colonies toward a historic turning point. By the mid-1700s, tensions between the colonies and Britain had reached a breaking point. British taxes and strict control angered the colonists, who believed they deserved representation in government. Protests began to spread. Then, in 1775, conflict erupted into war. The colonies launched a revolution against the British Empire in what became known as the American Revolutionary War. Leading the colonial army was a determined military leader, George Washington. Despite facing one of the strongest empires in the world, the colonists refused to give up. After years of difficult fighting, the revolutionaries achieved an impossible victory. The birth of a new nation was now within reach. In 1776, a bold document changed the course of history forever. The United States Declaration of Independence formally announced that the American colonies were no longer under British rule. Written primarily by Thomas Jefferson, the document declared that all people are created equal and possess certain unalienable rights. These powerful ideas inspired not only a nation, but future movements for freedom across the world. The United States of America had officially been born, but the challenges of building a new nation were only just beginning. During the 19th century, the young United States expanded rapidly westward. Settlers traveled across vast landscapes in search of land, wealth, and opportunity. New territories were explored, railroads connected distant regions, and cities began to rise across the continent. But expansion also brought conflict. Native American tribes were displaced from their ancestral lands, and political tensions continued to grow within the nation. America was expanding, but it was also becoming deeply divided. By the 1860s, the nation faced its greatest crisis. Deep divisions over slavery and political power led to a brutal conflict known as the American Civil War. The northern and southern states fought a devastating war that would determine the future of the country. During this time, President Abraham Lincoln fought to preserve the Union and end slavery. After 4 years of intense fighting, the Union emerged victorious. Slavery was abolished, and the United States began the long process of rebuilding and healing. Following the Civil War, America entered a period of rapid industrial growth. Factories expanded, railroads connected the nation, and millions of immigrants arrived seeking new opportunities. Cities such as New York City became centers of commerce, culture, and innovation. By the early 20th century, the United States had become one of the world's leading economic powers. The 20th century brought global conflict on an unprecedented scale. The United States played a major role in both World War I and World War II. These wars reshaped global politics and strengthened America's position on the world stage. After World War II, the United States emerged as one of the most powerful nations on Earth. Today, the United States continues to shape the modern world. Technological innovation, global business, and cultural influence define the nation's role in the 21st century. Places like Silicon Valley have become the heart of technological advancement. Companies such as Apple and Microsoft continue to change how people live, work, and communicate. From a group of small colonies to a global superpower, the story of America is a journey of ambition, resilience, and transformation. And that story is still being written today. By the early 1770s, tension between the American colonies and the British government had reached dangerous levels. Colonists were growing increasingly frustrated with heavy taxation and strict British control. Many believed they were being treated unfairly by a distant government that did not represent their interests. Protests began spreading across colonial towns as merchants, farmers, and workers united in resistance. These growing tensions would soon ignite a revolution that would change the course of history. In 1773, one of the most famous acts of colonial resistance took place in Boston Harbor. Disguised as Native Americans, a group of colonists boarded British ships and dumped large quantities of tea into the water. This bold protest became known as the Boston Tea Party. The message was clear. The colonists would no longer accept unfair taxation and control for Britain. The year was 1775, and tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain had reached a breaking point. What began as protests and political arguments soon erupted into open warfare. Ordinary farmers, merchants, and citizens put down their plows and picked up muskets, forming militias that would become the backbone of the Revolutionary Army. They faced one of the most powerful military forces in the world, yet their determination and unity gave them a unique strength. These early battles were chaotic, unpredictable, and often brutal. Every skirmish, every march through forests and fields was a test of courage and endurance. The fight for independence was not just a war of weapons, but a struggle of ideas, freedom, representation, and the right to govern themselves. It was the spark that ignited a revolution and forever changed the trajectory of history. At the helm of the revolutionary forces stood George Washington, a leader of extraordinary vision and unwavering determination. Trusted by the Continental Congress, Washington took command of an army made up mostly of volunteers with little training. Despite the overwhelming odds, he instilled discipline, hope, and resilience in his soldiers. From icy winters at Valley Forge to relentless campaigns across enemy territory, Washington's leadership became the defining element of the revolution. His strategic foresight, unyielding courage, and ability to inspire loyalty turned a ragtag militia into a fighting force capable of challenging the might of the British Empire. Under his command, the colonies moved steadily toward independence, driven by the belief that a free nation was worth every sacrifice. After years of relentless conflict, the impossible finally became reality. The American colonies had triumphed against the British Empire, and in 1783, the Treaty of Paris recognized the United States as an independent nation. Joyous celebrations erupted in towns and cities as citizens welcomed the dawn of a new era. The revolution had succeeded, but the work was far from over. Establishing a new government, creating laws, and uniting a diverse population posed immense challenges. Yet the idea that ordinary people could govern themselves had taken root, and the United States was born as a nation founded on principles of liberty, democracy, and self-determination, a concept that would inspire generations to come. With independence secured, the Founding Fathers faced faced the monumental task of constructing a government that could sustain the fledgling nation. Led by thinkers like Thomas Jefferson, they crafted documents and frameworks that balanced power, ensured rights, and reflected the ideals of freedom and justice. Debates were fierce, compromises were necessary, yet every decision carried the weight of history. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights became pillars of governance, guiding citizens through a new era. Citizens were beginning to understand that building a nation required not only courage in battle, but wisdom and leadership, foresight, and a commitment to shared ideals. These foundations would endure, shaping the United States into a stable, resilient, and enduring democracy. As the young nation grew, its citizens looked westward toward the vast, untamed landscapes of the continent. Pioneers packed their families and belongings into covered wagons, embarking on journeys filled with uncertainty, danger, and hope. Rivers, forests, and mountains became both obstacles and opportunities, testing the resilience of settlers at every step. Expansion offered land, resources, and a promise of a new life. But it also brought tension with indigenous peoples and the challenges of building communities from scratch. Each journey, each homestead established, was a testament to the determination, ambition, and enduring spirit that characterized the American frontier. In 1848, news of gold in California ignited a fever that spread across the nation. Thousands of hopeful settlers, miners, and dreamers poured into the West, seeking wealth and a fresh start. Camps in small towns sprang up almost overnight, filled with the clamor of pickaxes, shovels, and hope. Life was harsh, unpredictable, and often dangerous. Rivers were panned for gold, mountains explored, and fortunes gambled. The gold rush fueled the growth of cities, stimulated commerce, and transformed the social and economic fabric of the nation. It was an era defined by risk, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of opportunity. Yet, as the country expanded, deep divisions began to emerge. Disagreements over slavery, states' rights, and economic priorities created tension that stretched across the growing nation. Northern and southern states developed distinct identities and conflicting interests. Political debates intensified, and compromise became increasingly difficult. The nation that had fought for independence now faced the prospect of internal conflict, testing the very principles upon which it had been founded. These divisions set the stage for a war that would challenge the United States to its core. By 1861, tensions erupted into open conflict. The United States was divided between the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South. What followed was 4 years of brutal warfare, marked by staggering loss, courage, and endurance. Soldiers marched through fields, forests, and towns, facing disease, hunger, and relentless battles. The Civil War tested the nation's commitment to freedom, unity, and equality. Amidst the devastation, the resolve to preserve the Union never wavered. It was a defining struggle that would shape the future of America forever. In the early hours of a quiet morning, everything changed. A nation once focused on growth, prosperity, and dreams was suddenly thrust into the chaos of war. From the factories of Detroit to the farmlands of Kansas, the call was heard loud and clear. America must rise. When the United States entered World War II, it wasn't just soldiers who answered the call. It was an entire nation. Young men left their homes, trading comfort for courage. Families stood at train stations, holding back tears, not knowing when or if they would reunite again. But the battlefield wasn't only overseas. Back home, millions of women stepped into factories, building planes, tanks, and weapons, proving that strength knows no boundaries. The economy transformed overnight. Industries roared to life. Every bolt tightened, every engine built carried one message. Victory is not optional, it is necessary. Through sacrifice and unity, America became more than a country. It became a force. On the front lines, soldiers faced unimaginable fear, yet pressed forward with unbreakable determination. Back home, citizens rationed food, conserved fuel, and supported the war effort in every way possible. This was more than a war. It was a test of resilience, identity, and the very idea of freedom. And when the dust finally settled, the world would never be the same. Because in its darkest hour, a nation didn't fall, it rose. The United States. At the heart of the conflict stood Abraham Lincoln, a leader of vision, courage, and unwavering moral clarity. Confronted with unprecedented challenges, Lincoln navigated the nation through its darkest days. He understood that preserving the Union and ending slavery were inseparable goals. Through speeches, letters, and decisive actions, he inspired millions to continue the fight for freedom and unity. His leadership was both practical and symbolic, embodying the ideals for which the nation had fought since its founding. After years of relentless fighting, the Civil War came to a close in 1865. The Union emerged victorious, slavery was abolished, and the nation began the arduous process of Reconstruction. Towns were rebuilt, economies revived, and citizens sought to heal divisions that had torn communities apart. Though challenges remained, the United States had proven resilient. The principles of liberty, equality, and democratic governance had endured despite the crucible of war, and the nation stood ready to grow stronger than ever before. When the war finally ended, the silence felt different, not empty, but waiting. Across the United States, cities stood strong, but changed. Factories that once built weapons now faced a new mission: to build a future. After World War II, America wasn't just recovering, it was reinventing itself. Millions of soldiers returned home, not as warriors, but as builders. They carried with them discipline, resilience, and a vision for something greater. Neighborhoods began to rise where empty land once stood. Highways stretched across the country, connecting people like never before. And industries in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, a powerful transformation began to reshape the United States forever. This was the era of the American Industrial Revolution, a time when innovation, ambition, and raw determination turned a young nation into an industrial powerhouse. It all started with a shift. America moved away from small farms and handcrafted goods, stepping boldly into a world of machines, factories, and mass production. At the center of this change was one invention that changed everything: the steam engine. It powered factories, drove transportation, and opened the door to endless possibilities. Cities like New York City and Philadelphia quickly grew into bustling industrial hubs. Workers flooded in from rural areas, and immigrants arrived by the millions, all searching for opportunity in a rapidly expanding economy. Visionaries like Samuel Slater helped bring British textile technology to American soil, earning him the nickname, the father of the American Industrial Revolution. Soon after, innovators like Eli Whitney revolutionized production with the concept of interchangeable parts, making manufacturing faster, cheaper, and more efficient. Transportation also evolved at an incredible pace. The construction of the Erie Canal connected the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes, dramatically reducing shipping costs and fueling trade across the nation. Meanwhile, railroads expanded rapidly, linking cities and industries like never before. But this progress came with a price. Factory workers often faced long hours, dangerous conditions, and low wages. Child labor was common, and labor rights were almost non-existent. Still, these hardships sparked the early beginnings of labor movements that would eventually fight for workers' rights. By the mid-19th century, the United States had transformed. What was once a primarily agricultural society had become a booming industrial nation, setting the stage for its rise as a global economic leader. The Amber. Cities like New York became symbols of progress and opportunity. Skyscrapers soared, streets bustled with commerce, and cultural institutions flourished. Immigrants, entrepreneurs, and innovators converged, shaping the social and economic landscape. Yet rapid growth also brought social challenges, crowded housing, and labor disputes. Amidst the noise and energy of urban life, America's future was being forged one block, one street, one city at a time. In 1941, a surprise attack thrust the United States into World War II. Civilians, factories, and soldiers mobilized for a global conflict of unprecedented scale. The nation responded with resilience and determination, producing weapons, ships, and planes to support the war effort. Soldiers fought on multiple continents, facing harsh conditions and incredible danger. The collective effort of millions ultimately secured victory for the Allies, establishing the United States as a dominant global power. After the war, America experienced the Roaring '20s, a decade of prosperity, innovation, and cultural transformation. Jazz music, automobiles, skyscrapers, and new technologies energized cities and towns alike. People embraced new freedoms, experimented with modern lifestyles, and celebrated the optimism of a nation rebounding from conflict. It was a time of bold ideas, social change, and limitless ambition, reflecting the energy of a rapidly evolving society. In 1941, a surprise attack thrust the United States into World War II. Factories, civilians, and soldiers mobilized for a global conflict of unprecedented scale. The nation responded with resilience and determination, producing weapons, ships, and planes to support the war effort. Soldiers fought on multiple continents, giants, facing harsh conditions and incredible danger. The collective effort of millions ultimately secured victory for the Allies, establishing the United States as a dominant global power. From the ashes of two world wars, a new force rose, bold, innovative, and unstoppable. The United States didn't just rebuild, it redefined power. With unmatched military strength, a booming economy, and global cultural influence, America became the world's superpower. From Wall Street to Silicon Valley, from Hollywood to the Pentagon, its reach shaped the modern age. This isn't just dominance, it's leadership on a global stage. This is the rise of the American superpower. After World War II, a new kind of global struggle emerged. The United States and the Soviet Union, both victorious superpowers, faced off in an ideological battle that spanned continents. Though they never engaged in direct combat, tensions ran high as both nations sought to expand their influence, develop nuclear arsenals, and assert global dominance. From political maneuvering to covert operations, the Cold War shaped diplomacy, economics, and military strategy for decades. Americans lived with the ever-present tension of a potential nuclear confrontation, while innovation and competition fueled advancements in technology, science, and culture. The Cold War tested the patience, resilience, and ingenuity of the nation, defining America's role on the world stage for generations to come. In the midst of Cold War rivalry, the United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a thrilling race to the stars. American scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop rockets, satellites, and spacecraft capable of reaching space. The launch of satellites and unmanned probes marked the beginning of a new era in science, exploration, and national pride. For the United States, space became not just a frontier of discovery, but a symbol of technological superiority and ingenuity. This competition inspired a generation of scientists, innovators, and dreamers to look beyond the Earth, imagining a future filled with limitless possibilities. On July 20th, 1969, humanity witnessed a historic milestone. The Apollo 11 mission successfully landed on the moon. Astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, declaring, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Millions around the globe watched in awe as the United States achieved what was once thought impossible. The mission symbolized American determination, ingenuity, and ambition. It showcased the nation's ability to unify science, engineering, and courage to accomplish a feat that would inspire generations. The moon landing was more than a technical achievement. It was a testament to vision, collaboration, and the enduring human spirit. The 1960s and 1970s brought powerful waves of social change. Citizens across the nation demanded civil rights, equality, and justice. From peaceful marches to impassioned speeches, Americans challenged entrenched systems and sought to redefine the promise of liberty. The civil rights movement reshaped society, breaking down barriers of race and discrimination, while inspiring subsequent movements for women's rights, environmental protection, and political reform. These years were a reminder that democracy requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to confront injustice. Social change became a defining feature of modern America, shaping its identity and values. As the century progressed, technological breakthroughs began to transform American life. Computers, telecommunications, and industrial automation revolutionized industry, commerce, and communication. Laboratories and research centers became hubs of creativity, producing inventions that changed how Americans worked, learned, and connected. The seeds of the digital age were planted, giving rise to tools, platforms, and innovations that would connect people across the globe. Innovation became not just a goal, but a cultural ethos, symbolizing America's commitment to progress and exploration. In California, Silicon Valley emerged as the epicenter of technological advancement. Engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs transformed ideas into revolutionary products. Startups evolved into global companies, reshaping how people lived and worked. The Valley became a symbol of risk-taking, creativity, and the limitless potential of human ingenuity. Its influence extended beyond technology, inspiring education, culture, and economic development across the United States and the world. Companies like Apple and Microsoft led the way in the digital revolution. Personal computers, smartphones, and software transformed everyday life. These innovations connected billions, redefined work and communication, and spurred economic growth. The rise of technology giants showcased America's capacity for entrepreneurship, problem-solving, and visionary thinking. Through innovation, collaboration, and relentless pursuit of excellence, these companies became synonymous with modern American progress. Today, American cities are vibrant centers of culture, commerce, and innovation. Skyscrapers tower over bustling streets. Neighborhoods thrive with diversity, and urban life reflects creativity, resilience, and ambition. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago embody both historical legacy and forward-looking energy. Modern infrastructure, technology, and culture converge to create dynamic environments where citizens live, work, and innovate. These cities stand as a testament to the enduring vision and determination that has shaped America over centuries. From politics and economy to culture and technology, the United States wields unparalleled global influence. Its ideas, innovations, and leadership resonate worldwide. From diplomacy to entertainment, the American footprint is evident on every continent. Global networks of trade, communication, and culture bear the mark of American ambition and creativity. This influence is not static. It evolves continuously, reflecting the country's adaptability, resilience, and ongoing role as a global leader. From 13 colonies to a technological superpower, the story of the United States is one of ambition, struggle, and transformation. Every challenge faced, every innovation achieved, and every ideal pursued reflects the nation's enduring spirit. America's journey is not complete. It continues to evolve, inspire, and shape the future. The nation stands as a testament to resilience, creativity, and the boundless potential of human endeavor. Its history reminds us that the story of a nation is the story of its people, their courage, and their vision.